Well, hey, some of you might be thinking dating, like dating is played out. Like I'm not even in the dating arena anymore. Like this is not what I need to be doing. This is like, hey, look, I've tried that, been there, done that. Listen, I just want you to know that this is a relevant series. It's a series for everybody. It's all inclusive. I mean, there's meat in here for the student that has never even dated, right? And there's meat in here for those of you that have been married 20 years and got it all figured out, baby. There is stuff in here for those of you that may have been there and done that, tried that, got the t-shirt to prove it with his face on it. And now all of a sudden you're back in this awkward phase of the dating cesspool. It's all there. And look, I don't even have to tell you about it. It's complicated, right? Like it's more than just a Facebook status. Like it is complicated. I mean, it's complicated when you're 13. It's complicated when you're 16. It's complicated when you're 17. It's complicated when you're 27, 37, 47, 57, 67, and 77. And it's complicated. I mean, it is. And one of the reasons that I'm so excited about this series is because it finally gives me an opportunity without interjecting it in every sermon to just really talk about some stuff that breaks my heart. Honestly, it breaks my heart. And one of those things is watching people make relationship decisions that undermine their relationships. I mean, you want to talk about breaking somebody's heart. I mean, it's that. It's like watching people make what's already complicated even more complicated. As if there isn't enough pain that is unavoidable in the world, we've got to add more to it with our own bad decisions. You want to know who else I'm excited for in this series? Is for the daters. But not just the daters, the serial daters. Gunning. And so there, I know that it's none of you guys. It's whoever's watching this afterwards that this is going to be for. And it's those serial daters. I mean, in fact, you don't even like the word date. Because like if it don't end in test drives, you just chalk it up as a L. And you're like, I'm out the door. Like, I can already see this ain't going the right way, honey. Like, you haven't even been communicating back to the text that I sent that was insinuating some stuff. And so I'm just going to chalk it up to an L. And you're like basically in that place where like one day I'm going to settle down, but that day is not today because ain't nobody going to hold me down. Oh, no. We got to keep on moving. See, y'all don't know nothing about that. See, they was with it a little bit better this service, you know, but I mean, it's just, you know, you're in this place where like, you're just like, I'm not playing this game. It's my business, pastor. You need to stay up out of it. Well, then quit putting it on Facebook, dog. I mean, you've been living it out loud, but when I correct you, all of a sudden, you're offended. Well, you invited the correction, okay? And so here it goes. We got 6 weeks of it. And some people's like, I'm not coming back till July. See you in July. Independence Day, I'll have freedom. I can do whatever I want, right? And we get to live in this life, and let me tell you something, and you may not care about this, you may, I don't know, but it's heartbreaking to me, and the reason that it's heartbreaking to me is because, honestly, you're hurting yourself, and you're hurting other people. And that's not the will of God. The will of God is not that you would hurt yourself or that you would hurt somebody else. And did you know that you are actually currently writing your life story? You're currently writing your life story, and to be fair, like, I don't want you to have to be a liar for your entire life. And what I mean by that is some of the decisions that we're making right now are going to be lies that we tell later to the people that we think is the right person. Because we're ashamed of the decisions that we're making in our marriage, in our relationships, in situations that isn't even godly. And we get in these relationships with people, and it's interesting because it's stuff that ultimately is going to break somebody's heart in the end. And the decisions that we're making and the stuff that we're doing. And I don't want that for you. I don't want that for you. Is what I also don't want for you is I'm laying a foundation here. Is what I also don't want for you is I don't want you to be somebody's regret. I don't want you to be somebody's regret when they tell their story. Because let's face it, when your name comes up, they're going to tell something about you. Well, no, they won't. Yes, they will. Well, how do I know that? Because you say something about them every time you bring their name up. On Facebook, on the prayer list. You know, the Christian gossip line. Could you be praying for such and such? You would not believe what just happened in his life. I left him like a bad habit. You know, and we get into this, and we're going through all of this stuff, and because of the things that we've done in our past or the things that we get when we finally meet that person, we're actually going to be ashamed of some of the decisions that we've been making, and you're deciding right now what people will say about you in the future. And I know the guys, they're like, yeah, that's all for the ladies. Listen, you're not out of the woods here. Because the truth of the matter is I don't want you to be a hypocrite either. Well, what do you mean by that, Pastor? Well, what I mean by that is if you wouldn't want somebody doing it to your sister or your daughter, why would we do it to the women that we date? Now. I know. But the truth is I don't want you to be a hypocrite. I don't want you to do it because I may not know every single one of you, but here's what I do know about you. You don't like hypocrites. And you want to know how I know you don't like hypocrites? Because you don't even attend church because it's full of hypocrites. Well. And so you're right. You're right. You might see your way out because it's full of hypocrites today. I'm just letting you know. It's full. And honestly, I really don't want to see, because it breaks my heart, it breaks our heart to see people living a double standard. You know what I'm talking about. To say that you're one way, but you're really not. You know, like you're willing to fight some dude that treated your sister a certain type of way or treated somebody else a certain type of way, but yet you dogging women out and doing stuff that you shouldn't even be doing, and you're doing stuff, but all of a sudden you're offended because somebody's did the same thing that you've done. How would you? Here's the way that I look at it. I try to be the man that my daughter will marry. And I don't mean that in a weird way. I mean that in the way that I'm going to exemplify the man that my daughter will chase after. Because if you ain't being the man that your daughter is going to marry, what are you even doing? Right? What are you doing? And ladies, I know. You're like, woo, glad he's going in on the men. Well, listen, there's some stuff that breaks my heart about you too. And the truth of the matter is I don't want you to be treated like a commodity. In fact, I would even say it like this. I don't want you to allow yourself to be treated like a commodity. Because the truth of the matter is many of the times it's your decision. Right? Do you even know what a commodity is? Well, I'm glad that you might not, because I prepared for this. And so I got the answer. The commodity is something that was bought and sold and traded and sometimes eventually even just discarded. And I just wonder that maybe depending on your life and culture that you was raised up in, the way that you managed your relationships, that maybe you have started to feel kind of like a commodity. Right? And I honestly don't want you to feel that way. And neither does God. I believe that God wants you to feel like someone who has extraordinary value and extraordinary worth. Like you are far greater than some chump that you've settled for. You're far greater than some of the things that you've allowed yourself to be said about. You're far greater than some of the regrets and the stories that people have told. And it's something different because, listen, ladies, if you get accustomed to being mistreated, eventually you'll begin to define yourself that way. You will begin to look at yourself as the way that you are treated, and you will completely misplace the identity that God has put on you. And God has been saying something about you far greater than whatever some chump has been saying about you. And I believe that God wants to rewrite your story. And I think that you should quit settling for heartbreaks and allow God to do something brand new in your life. And so there's two myths. There's two myths that we're going to look at today. And I believe that they drive a lot of confusion relationally. And like most myths, once you surface the myth and look at it, you realize, well, that's kind of ridiculous. I don't know if you've ever watched Mythbusters, but when you watch the show, it's like, see, I knew that wasn't real. I knew that was not real. But these two myths actually sit in the undercurrent of our thinking and our assumptions, and they drive decisions that we make about relationships. All relationships, really, and in fact, they're really unexplored assumptions, like assumptions that we never actually look into. We don't know why we keep making these dumb decisions. We just keep making them, and we keep treating people the same way. But the really funny thing is that in every other area of life, financially, business, whatever you might do, whenever there's an unexplored assumption, it's a very dangerous thing because it actually drives the decisions that we didn't even realize that we were making, and they completely inform it. But here's the kicker, is you don't even know that it's informing your decisions and you're making bad choices because of something that you haven't even explored. You just keep doing it. And here's what it is, right? These myths. And whenever I say it, you're going to be like, oh yeah, and I explain it, you're going to be like, yeah, that's ridiculous. That's not true. But the first one is this, the right person myth. The right person myth. Right? This is that myth that it's not where there's not a right person for you. The right person myth is that once you meet the right person, everything's going to be all right. And all the married people grumble and they tap each other and they're like, that's not true. That's definitely a myth. Right? And now they have a whole weird conversation on the way home from church because I just started a fight for them. But the myth is this, is that once you meet the right person, everything's just going to be all right regardless of what you do now to then. It don't matter what I got to do now because once I finally meet the right person, once I got this right person, everything in my life is going to completely change. And the myth says that I can play around, I can play with this person, do that, I can do whatever I want. I can treat guys the way that I want, I can treat girls the way that I want, I can just do whatever I want. But when I finally meet the right person, everything's going to change. The past just completely disappears because I finally met fate. I finally met the one that God created for me. I knew he was out there, and I knew if I just tried enough of them on, I would find him. And one girl looks over and bats her eyes like Betty Boop at the man that she came here with. We're not going to tell anybody what you guys did last night. What? Why you make it awkward? You watch it on TV? You let your kids watch it with you? Oh, but nobody wants to talk about that. Why should the church shy away from subjects that we allow vividly in front of our kids? How many? Oh. Boy, you better watch your mouth. Essentially, we think that our problem is we just haven't met the right person yet. Or maybe you met the right person and you moved in with them. Maybe you actually even married the right person, but things just aren't right anymore. Like right done went to wrong. And absolute change or absolute truth actually shifted, and now you're slowly coming to the conclusion that you must have just met the wrong right person. Like the right person was right for somebody, but it just ain't right for you. Like it's right for somebody, like he's kind of a good dude, but it just ain't for me. Like I can just, like like he's got a great personality, but like he just ain't for me. And so now you're back out on the prowl for what? For the next right person. If I could just come and fall into the next right person. And when I say it like this, it really sounds ridiculous, right? Like it's all funny, like everybody's laughing, and let's be honest. I mean, this way honestly fuels our relationship decisions. Like I'm just unhappy because I haven't met the right person. Honestly, I'm with the wrong person. And if I had not been instructed to do it this way, then I would have never been stuck in this situation with this person that I can't even stand. I hate this person. Like, how am I even with the wrong person? If I would have met the right person, then everything would have been completely different. My marriage would have been different. My relationships would have been different. Everything would have been different. I would have been happier at work. We would have had better kids. Oh, man, have you even seen my kids? Oh, my gosh. Like, God, I can't be with the right person. I've even adopted this person's kids, and like I'm treating them like they're mine, but God, the right person. I just need the right person. And the assumption is that once you finally find the right person, everything is going to be fine, including you. Everything's going to change. Everything. And we think that somehow, all of a sudden, we're going to quit all these bad habits. You know, your reckless spending, you know, your irresponsible financial habits. You know, all of a sudden, men, once you find the right person, you're no longer going to have to watch porn. If you could just find a woman that would do these nasty things that I've been watching with me, I just haven't found the right person, Pastor. Like, if my wife would do with me what I've been watching, we would be good. Like, she's not willing to submit. The Bible says submit therefore. She's not willing to submit. And so I have to fulfill my needs, Pastor. I got needs, and you just don't understand. I just ain't met the right person. And your bad financial habits, like, listen, y'all need an episode of Dave Ramsey so that he can tell you that it's stupid. It's dumb decisions. You're spending more than you make. How can you ask? Well, if I just meet a man that makes a bunch of money, then I can just be a stay-at-home mom, and I'll just produce him all these kids, and then if he does leave me because he ain't the right guy, then I'll just tax him. I hit him for $1,800 a month, and then I won't even really have to do nothing, and then I'll just move on to the next guy, and then I got 6 baby daddies, and then I'll just get like $1,800 from every single one of them, and then, shoot, you do the math. It all adds up. We good. I just need the right person. I just ain't found him yet. If I could just meet the right person. But here's the truth. Here's what we know about love. All it takes is a pulse. All it takes is a pulse. If you got a pulse, you can fall in love. Staying in love requires so much more. That's what this series is about. Is the staying in love part. Right? And I'm just laying a foundation for the whole series, right? Because this is what it's really all about. But we're not entertained by that. Like, we're not entertained by the falling in love part. I mean, you know, Pure Flix can't even make a movie about that. They just need to raise their budget. And then maybe they could do it, but it's not entertaining to find out about love. I mean, you spend an hour and 45 minutes watching them fall in love, and then all of a sudden, once they finally fell in love, what happens? Movie's over. It don't give you no details and feelings. Like, how am I supposed to apply this? Like, and society does all of this stuff, and it's nobody's fault. It's just the way that it is. So what is my fault is now it's my job to tell you everything about what you don't want to hear. So here we are. And the second myth is this, and then I'm going to jump into the word. And the second myth is this, is the promise myth. The first one is the right person myth. The second one is the promise myth. And this is the myth that if I could just put a ring on it, if I could just get him to put a ring on it, if I could just marry him, I know everything would change. If I can just do it, all I need is a promise. Then when it comes to relationships, all of a sudden, a promise actually replaces the need for preparation. I just need to marry him. Meet me at the altar in your white dress. We ain't getting no younger. We might as well do it. I just need to meet him at the altar. Like, girl, if you understood, like, if I could just wifey him, like, it would change everything. Like, we just need a wedding day. And we think that a commitment to a promise or a vow, we can get into a healthy, long-lasting relationship. Wrong. You can't vow your way or promise your way or commit your way into a successful future. And everything that came before that can be overcome by just a promise and a party. If we throw a big wedding, we're going to have a big, beautiful wedding. And it doesn't even matter, because if we can just have this big wedding and I can just stand at the altar and make this promise in this white dress and have a big party, then the entire past disappears. And all of a sudden, I'm a brand new person, and I become something brand new no matter the situation of your current condition. It doesn't matter. If I can just make a promise, listen, a promise is never a substitute for preparation. Okay? We know this in every other arena of life except relationships. right? We know this in academics. I got a Bible college degree. You want to know how I got that Bible college degree? I just looked at the dean of academics and I said, hey, I promise you that I'm going to retain all of this and I'm going to do good. I promise you. And they said, well, no, I don't know about all that. And I said, no, you got to study. You got to prepare for it. You got to study and put time into it. You got to prep for it. In every single arena of life, we know the order of things that we have to prepare for, right? No Bible call or no basketball coach or Andy Reid isn't going to pull them all in and say, hey guys, look, let's get into the locker room. We know that we've got Pat Mahomes. We don't need to practice. We're going to win this thing no matter what. And I promise you that by the end of this thing, we're going to be the Super Bowl champions again. No, that's not how it works, right? You don't know it. Every coach knows you don't promise to win games. What do? You prepare to win games. You got practice. You got to do all this stuff. You got two-a-days. You got all this stuff. And the same is true in relationships. Let me put it this way. I do does not mean I can. See, that's the reality, is a lot of people think that just because I say I do, all of a sudden means that my entire relationship is going to change and it means that I can. In fact, you know that this isn't true because you've been to a wedding recently, somewhere on your third side of the family, and you have sat in the back row and you watched them and you thought, oh man, they got up there and they gave all these I love yous and they started reciting Michael Bolton lyrics into their vows that they wrote themselves, and they're singing these love songs to one another and everybody's crying, and you're not trying to be negative, but you just think, yeah, good luck. The odds are stacked against you guys. Like, this is not happening, buddy. Yeah, I've seen the way that you guys, and you're not trying to be negative, but you're just thinking intuitively, and you're thinking, man, they have not prepared for this. They don't even know. And if you're married, you know, like, they're like, you don't even know what you're getting yourself into, buddy. Like, you guys have not even dealt with these bad habits. You guys have not dealt with any of this stuff. And I'm not trying to be negative, but man, like, they haven't made any good decisions. I mean, honestly, they're really immature. Like, man, they just do all of these stuffs. Listen, saying I do does not make you capable. Saying I do makes you accountable. And when you're accountable but not capable, you end up miserable. And a lot of relationships are in miserable states right now because they're accountable but they're not capable. And they haven't prepared for any of this stuff. Listen, if you aren't preparing, you'll never be prepared. You'll never be able to have a good relationship. And honestly, unfortunately, when it comes to relationships, common sense is just not common anymore. I mean, it really isn't. And I mean, I get it. Yes, you love her, and yes, you love him, and you know, for those of you that might even be in a relationship, or maybe you're married, you're getting ready to come into the realm of conversation, and so don't think you escaped it. But here you are, and you have kids together, and you're wondering, man, I wonder, can we even fix this? Of course you can. Of course you can, but you don't fix it by trying to do what you did in the beginning. You also don't fix it by trying to just keep falling back in love with each other. It's weird how we say that we fall out of love. How do you fall out of love? You fall out of a car. You fall out of a bucket. You fall out of something. You don't fall out of love. You choose to not love somebody. You've made a long road of decisions that have brought you to a place where you choose not to love the person that you once loved. And you don't just fall back in love with each other. Well, if I could just fall back in love, then there would be, and there's a way forward, and that's why we're doing this series. We're going to lay out some foundations for everybody, and we're going to get into some stuff, and this is where the message of Jesus just really comes alive. Because listen, honestly, this is where following Jesus makes all the difference in the world. Why? Here's a disclaimer. Because following Jesus don't help you find the right person. Following Jesus helps you become the right person. Completely different. That's why every once in a while you meet somebody that you knew previously, right? And you run into them. Maybe you went to work with them. Maybe you went to school. Maybe whatever, that you was in college with them. And you run into them at the local Hy-Vee, and you see something, and they just, their whole demeanor has changed. I mean, they look clean. You know, their eyes are clear. The way that they approach themselves, the way that they conversate is different. They have this happiness on their face, and they seem to have their life all together. And they never really said what it was, but after asking a series of questions, you've put two and two together that they've given their life over to Jesus. And all of a sudden, something has happened in their life that has changed them. Listen, they didn't just meet the right person. They didn't just meet somebody new and their whole life changed. They didn't just fall into a good relationship. They became somebody new. They didn't find somebody new. They became somebody new. Let me ask you this. If you was to meet somebody from your past, if you was to meet somebody from your school days, if you was to meet somebody from a bad relationship, heaven forbid, we know some of y'all tried on some of them like some bad suits, but that ain't none of my business. But if we was to run into some of these people that we knew from before, would they know that we were a different person? Or would they know that we are a person that just says we go to church now? Would our actions be something different? Because I believe that there's a lot of people that act one way and then say something different. I'm not talking about any of your guys' Facebooks. I'm not talking about any of your guys' Instagrams that show some stuff that really shouldn't be shown. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about where are we at in our relationships with Jesus? Where are we at? Listen, following Jesus should help you become the kind of person that the person you're looking for is actually looking for. Right? It should help you become. Here's a story that I thought was funny that I heard another pastor tell. There was a 20-something-year-old girl that went to his school, went to his church, and he sat down with her, and this is what he was telling. He was asking her about relationships, and here's what he told her, or she said, I was at home one day, and my mom was ironing, and I was sitting on the bed, and I was going on and on about this guy that I had met at this party through college, and he was incredible with his job, and he was good looking. He had himself together, and he was a Christian. And she said, Mom, I'm telling you, he was your kind of Christian. Like, he was the real deal, holy filled, like he's your kind of Christian. And he's just, like, he wasn't just the guy that talked about it, but he was the guy that actually lived out the faith. I could tell that his faith was real. And she went on and on and on. And she said that her mom stopped ironing and set the iron on the ironing board and looked at her and said, that's great, honey. The problem is a guy like that is not looking for a girl like you. And she said a couple of choice words to her mom, cussed her out, went out of the house. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really know what happened. But it got to a point like, Mom, how are you going to say that about me? But see, the whole message from culture is if I can find the right person, everything will be all right. Never mind that I need to become the kind of person that somebody is looking for that's actually hoping for them, right? If you're married, here's your version, right? Are you still the person that they were looking for? Right? Are you still the person that they were hoping for? Or have you allowed your life, your kids, your money, your stuff, your busyness, your business, all these other things, have you allowed it to get in your way of who you were becoming? Of the person that he or she believed that she was entering into a relationship with whenever this whole thing started, but now all of a sudden life has gotten to the way and it's allowed you to get to where you're at. Well, here's where Jesus steps into the pages of history. Right? And I don't have time to really get into all of the background and the culture, but you can't even imagine the culture that he stepped into. I mean, prostitution was a real thing. Like, what we see now is just a mirror image of what was going on in the times back then. And there was stuff, cities that were known for prostitution. They had gods that they would worship that were gods of sex, and they would do all of these different things. And they said in some commentaries that prostitution was actually considered a form of birth control for the Romans and the Greeks, because they didn't want to stop doing this stuff, and they didn't want to keep adding kids to their family and dividing up their money. You know what I'm talking about. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Ain't paid child support and hecka. But we ain't talking about that. That's going to be in the next series that we talk about parenting in. I ain't got there yet, but I'm preparing it. Not really, but we need to. We need to get there, right? We need to talk about some stuff. right? And this is what it is. But he stepped into the world that is unimaginable. And in spite of this, Jesus introduces a brand new relational paradigm that can't even be understood even by the people, because towards the end of the ministry, Jesus has gathered all the fellas, the guys there, and he gives them this sort of like pep talk where like, hey, if you don't remember anything, if you didn't get anything that I said, remember this. You know, like I had a couple of those in here, you know, and like, if you don't remember anything, just remember this. And the words that I'm about to read that Jesus said, like, I don't even know that they really understood what he was talking about and could fully understand them until after the resurrection happened, right? Because it seems so complex to us because we're in a different world. But his words were so clear and so specific to them. And we're going to go into John 15, and we're going to look at what Jesus says to the disciples in John 15, starting in verse 1. And he says this, he says, hey, I am the true vine. I'm like a vine. I'm the vine, and my Father is the gardener. He says, okay, guys, here's how I want you to think about your relationship with me. I'm the vine, right? And they understood vines. We may not understand it. Like, it's not the concept that we think about today, but they totally understood it. And he says, hey, I'm the vine, and my heavenly Father is the gardener. That's the one who's tending the vine. And he cuts off every branch that's connected to me, that's plugged into me, the vine, that doesn't bear any fruit. Why? Because the goal of Jesus and the goal of this whole conversation is to explain how to get connected to Jesus, and Jesus bears fruit through them. That's his whole concept. He says, hey, while every branch that does not bear fruit, he prunes it. So you mean to tell me that even if I'm doing good, that he still cuts away some stuff? Yes, because not everything is healthy for you. Not everything is always there. While every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes it. Why? So there'll be more fruit, right? Because you can never get to the place where you've arrived. So the goal clearly here is some kind of fruit that we need to be bearing. Well, okay, Pastor, I give in. Like, what kind of fruit are you talking about? Well, just wait a minute. He's going to tell us. Because here's the truth of the matter, is that your life displays fruit. Whether you want to believe it or not, your life displays fruit. It's your reputation. It's the outcome of your decisions. It's the story that you like to tell everybody. But it's also the story that you don't like to tell everybody. You know, the one that you've been trying to hide because you've been living a secret life. You've been living double standards. You've been doing all of these things. These are the fruit. It's the fruit that Jesus is talking about. It's the fruit of your life. It's the fruit of everything. It's the idea of having on display broken relationships and healthy relationships and debt or financial security. It's all fruit. And the thing that's funny is a lot of the times we think that people are picking on us when really they see the fruit and they're just trying to give us guidance. Like, we live so out loud that whenever we invite advice to come in on instruction on how to make things a little bit better, all of a sudden we're offended and we don't want to hear it. And listen, your patterns have been showing for a long time, and people are just trying to give you good counsel because of the fruit that's been rotten. And Jesus is talking about something that's familiar to them, yet it's unfamiliar. Right? Because he's saying, I want you to allow me to bear fruit through you. And so he says, here's what you got to do. And all this is relationship language, I think. Because he says this, he says, remain in me as I also remain in you. In other words, he's just saying, hey, stay close to me. Stay connected to me. Follow me. And then he tells us why. He says, you need to stay close to me and follow me because no branch can bear fruit by itself. It's got to remain in love. It's got to remain in the vine. I'm getting ahead of myself. He's got to remain in the vine. And again, he's talking about something that's familiar to them. They understood the concept of vines. They understood the parable that he was talking about, and they was putting it all together. And he says, hey, if you take the branch from the vine, the branch dies. Like, it doesn't bear any fruit. And he says, if you're going to bear fruit, if you're going to bear the fruit that I want you to bear, like, you got to stay connected to me. You got to be drawn to me. And here's for the application. He says, neither can you. I think that he would say to John and Matthew and Andrew and the guys that was sitting there, he says, neither can you bear fruit unless you remain connected or plugged into me. You can't do it. You can't bear fruit on your own. You can't do all this stuff on your own. You can't have healthy relationships on your own. And he says to them, and he says what they've already figured out. He says, hey, I'm the vine. And he doesn't want them to miss it. So he goes into this repetition thing, and he says, hey, I'm the vine. And they're like, yeah, Jesus, we know that. You done said that, bro. You just established that like 3 seconds ago. Did you not remember what you said? You're a repeat. Like, why are you repeating yourself? Like, just go ahead and tell us what the rest of the stuff that we need to know. And he says, you guys are the branches that I'm talking about. And if you remain connected to me and I and you, and this is so cool, he says, I'm going to make you a promise. He says, you're going to bear much fruit. But you're not going to bear much fruit because all of a sudden you become a fruit bearer. You're going to bear much fruit because you stay connected to me and you start following me. That's why you're going to bear much fruit. And see, that's why when you meet the guy from the past or the woman from the past that you used to know, and all of a sudden their life has been so different, and when you ask them, hey, what's going on? They didn't talk about, well, you know, I woke up every morning for the last 10 years and made a commitment to do something one day that was different, and all of a sudden, by golly, my life just changed. No, they say, and typically they don't even understand. They're like, you know, honestly, I don't even really know what happened. About 4.5 years ago, I started going to church, and I heard somebody say something about reading the Bible, and I started reading the Bible, and then the next thing I know, here I am, and my life has been completely changed. And they're like, I just don't know, but here's the promise of Jesus, that if you plug into him, right, if you stay close to me, if you follow me, and one day you'll realize that you've become something new. If you realize that you've become something different, people will say that you've become something better than what you used to be. And then he goes on to define what he means by fruit. And he says this, and it's so powerful. In John verse 9, he says, just as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. So wait. Okay, so you changed the subject, Jesus. So we was just talking about gardening, and we was talking about vines, and we was talking about fruit, and we was going somewhere with this illustration, but then you switched it up on me, and now you're talking about love. Now you're talking about something completely different. So where are we at? And I think that he's like, hey, just hang with me. I'm getting there. Just as the Father has loved me, just as the Father has demonstrated his love through me, I have demonstrated the Father's love to you and through you. And now here's what I want you to do. I want you to remain in my love. And so they're like, okay, wait. Jesus. So God is the gardener, right? And you're the vine, I'm the branches. Okay, I kind of understand that. And we're going to stay connected to you. And whenever I stay connected, it's kind of this back and forth thing. And I'm supposed to stay connected to your love. Exactly. And Jesus said, so here's the surprise. And they're like, okay, give it to me. And he says, so if you keep my commands, you'll remain in my love. And oh my gosh, every new-aged believer says, I knew it. It's a bait and switch. It's all about rules. It's all about all these commandments. And if I start going to church, now I got to start tithing, and the church just wants my money. Man, I thought it was there. Like I felt this warm and fuzzy feeling, and I was just going off the feeling of the Holy Spirit. And it was just that feeling that I get, you know, when I'm worshiping, with them same dirty hands. But that's your business. Well, hold on. I seen stuff I had to rebuke. And he says, if you keep my commands, you'll remain in my love. Oh, well, I don't know. So here we go. All these commands and new stuff. And, oh, man, they did away with all this old stuff, and now they got all this new stuff. And I'm sure that the guys that were sitting there with Jesus was like, okay, great. I thought we were headed down a new direction, Jesus. Like, I thought you did away with the old law. I thought we didn't have to worry about the old stuff because the new has come and all of these things. And Jesus, we were with you, bro. But where are we at now? So if we keep your commands, is what you're saying, is if we keep your commands, then we'll remain in your love, right? And he's like, yeah. And they're thinking, okay, Jesus, you're Jesus, we're with you, bro. Like, hey, I'm going to bite into this. And so what are the commands? Hey, John, grab something to write with, because he's getting ready to give us a list of rules, and we know that this command, it's going to be a lot. But here's the shocker. Here's why we should follow Jesus, right? Because I think Jesus sees these guys scurry, and he sees the disciples not completely understanding what's going on, and he smiles and he says, okay, I'll tell you, John. This is all my version. I make all this stuff up. And he says, I'm with you, John. Here, write this down. My command is this. And he's like, okay, wait. Vine, branch, we're plugging in. It's all about back and forth kind of stuff. Like if I stay connected to you, you stay connected to me. And then all of a sudden, it's all about the Father's love. And we got this. And now we're talking about commands. And now you're saying there's just one command. And he's like, exactly, you got it. And he's like, okay. I'm ready. What's the command? And he says, love each other. Well, we don't need to write that down. Like, Jesus, we've been heard you say this, bro. I mean, it's kind of like this series. You know what I'm saying? Like, some of you guys are sitting there like, yeah, I've been dating for 35 years. You ain't going to tell me nothing about dating. Please listen. Because if you still dating after 35 years, dog, you need to listen. It ain't worked. Well, I just ain't met the right one. No, you ain't became the right one. Jesus has been trying to get you somewhere for a long time, but you've been giving away what he gave to you to keep pure. And then all of a sudden, you think that because you've given yourself to somebody that it's going to make it right. No, it ain't. It makes it wrong. And we've been living in infidelity relationships with Jesus, and we treat Jesus like a mistress, but we treat our boyfriend like our husband. I think we need to get to a point where we treat Jesus like our husband and we quit messing with these mistresses. Because God has something greater than we can even understand. And he said, hey, we don't even need to write this down. Like, we've heard this so many times. This ain't new to us. Jesus says, hang on. I'm not through. Because I'm not just trying to tell you to love the person that you're with. I'm trying to tell you to love everybody. And Jesus says, no. Remember the vine and the branch? Yeah. It's a different kind of love. It's a very specific kind of love, right? Like I don't want you to just be more loving. I want you to love specifically. I want you to have a focused kind of love. Like, here's the kind of love that I want you to have. I want you to love each other as I have loved you. Because this is about a relationship to me. This is about a relationship with me. And I want you to love. I want you to have the love that I have demonstrated towards you, and I want that same brand. I don't want some fake version of love. I don't want some knockoff version. Don't just iron on a tag. I want you to actually give me the same kind of love that I have given you. I want you to give that same love to other people, and I want that same combination, that same formula of love to flow through you, and I want you to love as I have loved you. Like, I'm telling you, I think the guys that was sitting in this room kind of understood it, right? Like that night, I think they kind of understood the idea of what he was talking about. But a few days later, the demonstration of love, I think it took their breath away because it literally took his breath away. And I think that what he was saying all of a sudden blew up. And on the other side of the resurrection, it's like, oh, this isn't some kind of like permissive, figure it out on your own kind of love. This is the kind of love where you actually put the other person first. Oh, boom, mind blown. And as I close, I'm going to explain it just a little bit, because this is the kind of love, I think, where they thought about where you lay down your own life. For a friend, for somebody that you love, like this is the kind of love where you put your wishes or their wishes before your own, right? It's the kind of love where you forgive regardless of what's been done and regardless of the offense that's happened to you. All of a sudden, it's completely different. This is the kind of love where I do unto you as my Father through Christ has done unto me. Right? And all of a sudden, this all starts making sense. And I believe that this is what Jesus meant by abiding in him. I think this is what Amen. It's not complicated. It's not super intangible. It's not super religious or super spiritual. Like, you don't have to be all crazy thinking about some of this. It's about learning how and allowing the love that God has for you to flow to others, people, through you, specifically to the ones within whom you are in a relationship with. How can we say that we love God but not love people? See, we talked about that all last 4 weeks, the last month. How can we say that we love God, but we hate our wife? How can we say that we love God, but we treat one of his children as a regret? How can we say that we love God, but we're actually the regret of another person? How can we say that when we have treated ourselves promiscuously and we've allowed ourselves to be something less than what God has even created us for? This is how you become a person worth looking for, is by staying connected to the vine, right? This is how you shift from gears from just finding, or if you're married, from controlling, and shaping and pressuring and conforming. Because if I can just ever get her to act the way that I want her to act, then I would be happy, Pastor. If she would just do what I tell her to do, then I would be happy. Like, you don't understand the stuff that we argue about. Oh my God. If I could just ever get him to stop doing this and start doing that, and if he would ever just do like this, and if he would ever just say this, and if he would ever do this, and if I could just get him shaped into the image of what I want him to be, then I would be happy. And Jesus says, that's never going to work. I have an idea, though. Hey, just follow me. Just follow me and you'll learn from me. So you mean to tell me that all I got to do is just stay connected to Jesus? Yes. And I'm telling you, when two people get on board with this, when two people embrace this approach to relationships, it's amazing what happens. This is how you become a person worth finding. Even more than that, this is how you become a person worth staying for. See, a lot of the times we get so consumed with the idea of finding the right person that we neglect the idea of becoming the right person. And a lot of the times we overlook what God has in store for us. We overlook some of the stuff because we're trying to find the right one. And if I can just put a ring on it, then everything is going to change and my life is going to be so great and I'll be able to have a relationship like Pastor Adam and Catherine, and it's just going to be so good. And oh man, the way that he's googly over her, and I just love that. And it's like, oh, if I could just find anybody. Well, I found him at church. Yeah, I know. I heard about it like 3 guys ago. Jesus said, well, go get your husband. About that, Jesus, I don't have a husband. He said, yeah, I know. You've been with 5. And a man you with now ain't even your husband. See, don't be offended because I just said something. They're like, oh, yeah, this is not for me, this whole series. I'll see you in July. You said, how long was this? See, here's the thing that will blow your mind if you're not a Christian or if you're new to this whole thing, that the kind of person that Jesus wants to lead you to become, like if you become one of his followers, is actually the kind of person that we're all ultimately looking for. And ultimately that we want to be or become. But it takes some stuff. And when two people can embrace what we're going to learn about next week, which is the fine print. Oh, yeah. You know, all the abdominal pains. Yeah. We're going to talk about all that next week. And when two people can figure out how to embrace the fine print, and when two people decide that they're going to stay connected to the vine, their relationship will get better. And it doesn't get better because they accidentally or magically found the right person. It gets better because they're becoming a better version of themselves, because following Jesus will make your life better. And even more than that, following Jesus will make you better at life. If I could have everybody stand.